Hey guys, welcome to episode number 60 of the ConquerMe podcast. Today I'm going to be jamming with a new friend of mine named Damon Nichols. Damon, welcome to the show.
All right, good to be here, man. Nice to
Absolutely.
meet you, and got a good little talk yesterday, so I'm excited about the future and uh,
Yeah, man.
looking forward.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk with you. So, we were obviously connected by mutual friends of ours who are kind of in the publishing space and personal development space. So, this podcast, as I shared with you yesterday, is really about I like to identify people that have been through adversity. It's about finding people who, they've had to overcome some pretty major things in their lives to get where they are today, and they have a story to tell. And the story needs to get out there. And for many of us who have been through things like addiction or whatever types of trials, a lot of times we don't leverage those stories to help other people. They just kind of go they're wasted, right? For to some degree. And so for me, having a very similar story as I know, you do, I really wanted a platform where I could get the message out and say, hey, there are other people who were like we were a decade ago who were in really bad shape and they're suffering and they're hurting and they don't really know how to overcome those things. And so the whole idea of the show, it's called Conquer Me, and it's about overcoming our own self-limiting beliefs and our own setbacks and our own challenges that we face in life, and then taking that message and sharing it and being vulnerable and open with that so that other people can hopefully benefit from that and overcome their own challenges, right? So you're a perfect candidate. The little bit that I know about you, man, you're a perfect candidate for the show. So I'm really excited to have you on. So let's start with this, Damon. Tell us just a little bit about who you are today. So let's not get into any of the adversity, any of the past, but who are you today?
All right, so one thing I do, I am a public speaker. I've been speaking to people and sharing my story. But aside from that, I own a successful storage shed building company, and I travel all over the country and put up storage facilities.
Awesome.
I've done a lot of real estate, and I've just built myself up a pretty good, little bit of success in real estate and
Yep.
construction.
Love it. Awesome, man. So what about what's your fitness life look like?
My fitness life. So I do a lot of CrossFit. I compete in a lot of different uh, Spartans, Tough Mudders. I've done 10 Tough Mudders over the last few years. I'm doing the CrossFit Open right now, 24. I just did 24-1 and 24-2,
Nice.
which 24-2, I can't do double unders very well. That's my nemesis. So that was
Okay.
that was that was pretty rough. But after the first one, I was in the top 2% in the world. And then the double unders kind of knocked me down. But I'm excited for the next workout to drop this afternoon, see
That's
what that
awesome,
is.
dude.
So
You said the top what percent?
I was in the top 2%. I think
Holy
I
cow,
placed
dude.
103 out of 6,000. So
No
and that's
way.
and that's in my age group in 55 and older. So I
Awesome, man.
feel
So
I feel pretty good about that. Yeah.
yeah, I guess so. So what's your current age?
I'm 55.
Okay, so 55, into CrossFit, crushing the fitness game, successful business. Um, what was your evolution to get to that point? Because I know you haven't always been there, right? So let's get into a little bit of your background and your backstory.
Okay, well, there's a lot there because I went through these massive cycles, and probably I'm going to say probably 35, 40 years I spent just spinning my wheels in and out of prisons, jails, institutions, drug treatment centers, strung out on one substance or another, get clean
Mm,
for a little while. It was just kind of started for me at about, I think when I was 18 is when it progressed to where I had to go to treatment, and I had a couple of needles. I had broken two needles off in my arm up to the point
mm,
where I was so strung out on cocaine in the 80s that I would get clean for a little while, and then I would go back to using once I got to the point where now I can get high again.
yep.
So that just kind of progressed for so many years. I tried to start a business. I went to prison when I was 9 days after I turned 21. I went to prison. I served a 6-year prison sentence. I
Mm,
got out. I was clean for a while. I met this woman. We ended up having having a couple kids. I tried to start a business, and that business failed just because it wasn't really anything I'd done. I took on a job. The guys went bankrupt. I didn't get
Mm,
paid. And so I went back to doing what I knew how to do, and that was deal drugs. You know, I
yep.
knew I could make money selling drugs. I knew I could do that. But then I got into cooking meth, and then from there it
Mm.
just it spiraled out of control. Then I ended up getting in a car wreck, and both my boys were injured, and their mom was killed.
Mm.
So that you would have thought that that would have been a big wake up call for me.
So you
It,
guys were all in the vehicle together? Everybody
yeah,
in?
we were all,
Okay.
yeah, and
Got it.
we crashed right outside of Pueblo, rolled end over end, and
So how
luckily
old were you at this point?
I was 30.
You were 30. Okay.
30,
So
yes.
started using drugs heavily at 18.
I actually started about probably 15 or 16.
Okay. So early, mid-teens, started
Yeah.
started dabbling with drugs. Now, does your family, did you come from a history of drug users?
Well, so my mom and dad got divorced when I was about 5 years old. So my mom was a drug addict and an alcoholic.
Got it.
So, and I was born and raised on this farm in Rocky Ford, Colorado, and grew up very poor. And and then when my mom took off, she took me and my brother, and for 9 months, my dad tracked us down and finally took us back. So
No way, man.
it was a really kind of traumatic experience running from my dad for a while, from school to school, town to town. We were up in Washington, and then it was a kind of a violent exchange when my dad came and took us
Mm.
back, and then we were on the back on the farm again. And I didn't see my mom for many years, and
Wow. Did
so
now did you guys you had siblings, I'm assuming?
I had one brother, so it was me and my dad and my brother.
Okay. And did you guys want to be back with your dad at that point when you were with your mom? I'm assuming she was in
Well,
active addiction. So
so here that's that. Now I know that was a huge part of where all of this stuff led me, because I wanted my mom. I love my mom, and
yep.
I needed love from her, and she wasn't there.
Right.
My dad was angry and had gone through this really nasty divorce, and I love my dad, and he did everything he could for us, but he was very angry at the situation, which
Got it.
I understand, and he didn't know how to deal because his dad died when he was younger. He didn't
Mm.
have like a lot of the support, so it was just kind of this generational thing that passed down.
Yeah.
And then he was in the army. He was a sergeant in the army. And we had this like drill sergeant type of
Mm.
lifestyle growing up, and it was a struggle. We raised sheep, and we didn't have very much money, and so it was really rough at that period of time in my life. Probably from the time I was 6 till probably 12, 13 years old
Got it.
was really hard, and it was just me and my brother. And I kind of took on the role of having to raise a younger brother, or
Yeah.
be that, take on that responsibility of making
Yeah.
sure things are taken care of.
And that's tough for a kid, man. So I very similar to you. My mom has been a active drug user, alcoholic for, well before I was born and still has her struggles today. And so it was the same thing. She would take me and she would go live with some boyfriend or whoever. And then when it got so bad that my life was in danger or the cops would get called or we would be, in a ditch somewhere after my mom passed out and crashed and the cops would come, my grandparents would find out where I was at and come save me, right, and kind of bring
Mm,
me back to there. So I get it, and I'm always interested in why people go down the path of using drugs and alcohol and looking for things to kind of make us feel better or different. And usually it starts with things early on in childhood, right? And it's like we think that our parents should just have it figured out because they're our parents. But what we don't
yeah.
realize until we're older is that they're a product of their parents and they're a
Mhm.
product of the struggles that their parents went through. And so it's up to us, really, people like me and you, to break that cycle. So to go back a little bit, just so I'm clear on the story, you're with your mom, your mom and dad split, you're somewhere, how old? About six or so?
I was 5. Yeah, I turned
Okay.
6 during that time.
So then you're bouncing around from school to school, probably a lot of instability, mom's drinking, drugging, doing all the things that goes along with that. Dad finally catches up. During that time, you're largely taking care of little brother because mom's not capable at that point, trying to feed her own addiction and do her thing. Finally, dad catches up, brings you guys back to the farm. So now it's you, your brother, your dad. Mom is gone for a
Yeah.
while. Okay. And then I would assume shortly after that, you started to dabble with drugs and alcohol, right?
Yeah. So through school, I, I became an outcast.
Okay.
Kids looked at me different. And for a while, I got bullied. I
Yeah.
was, I didn't have a mom, and we were super poor.
Yeah.
So I dealt with a lot of that, and I had just so much anger because I
Mm,
wanted my mom, and she was not there. I
I
had
get
this
it, bro.
abandonment that I didn't even know. Like I
Yes.
just this little child just needs somebody. So I got really, really, angry, and I got in a lot of fights,
Yeah.
I got to the point where I realized that these kids couldn't hurt me anymore, and
Mm,
then it became this monster,
yeah.
and then it was on, and I just wanted to just destroy everything around me, and I wanted to get high, and I wanted to, and that's all I did.
Yep.
But then when I finally had the opportunity to go back and see my mom, I was, I think, maybe 12, 13 years old, and she was living in Oregon, and she was still deep in her addiction. And there it was. It was in the house. It was easily
Mm,
available. And so like I went buck wild, and then it was a completely different culture from small town Rocky Ford farm town to, Eugene, Oregon, which is full of, you know, like all kinds of culture. So
mm,
mushrooms, acid, coke, meth, it was all
all the
just
things, man.
readily
Yep.
available there, and I went out of control with
Yep.
it. And she wasn't. She was, like I said, in her addiction. She wasn't able to take care of kids. We were just, these two teenage boys, or me as a
Yeah.
teenager, almost teenager. We went for a summer, and I was like, that's what I wanted. Like, I want to go live with mom. I want to go live with mom.
Right.
And my dad was like, no, that's not a good idea. And he didn't really have much of a choice. So I finished the ninth grade here, and I went to 10th grade there, and I couldn't even finish school. I was
Yeah.
just, all I wanted to do was just, get high and
Right.
get in trouble. So then I ended up getting in so much trouble, by the time I was 15, I wound up in jail. And luckily my dad still had legal custody of me. So he took me, and I came back to Colorado to, be on probation and get out of that. So,
Yep.
but, there, I'm like, when I came back, my dad was in complete shock because, like, I was not the same boy that left.
Mm,
I came back, and it was just like, I don't know who you are anymore. And so, my dad fought all the time, and all
yep.
I wanted to do was get high. And then I was just running amok, and then once I got into cocaine, then it was on.
Yeah.
That kind of, led me into just so many more. Actually got into, I had snorted cocaine, and I'd done a little bit of, crank at the time. But
Yep.
once I stuck a needle in my arm, it was a whole new world there.
It's game over, man. Yep.
Yeah,
And dude, like I told you, you're such an anomaly. I mean, there are very few people that I know that were at that level of addiction that are still around to talk about it, much less having any level of success and fulfillment in their life and productivity. Like I would love to know the numbers, but I'm telling you, it's so minute. Like it just doesn't happen. It very, very, very rarely happens. Now there are people that dabble with drugs and then they come out of the other side and they go, yeah, I did some drugs and now whatever. But once you're at that point and you're doing drugs like we did drugs, it's just very rare that they come out of it, man. So
yeah,
when we were connected, you told your story, and my wife was in the car at the time I was talking to you, and I'm like, man, this dude, like, I get him, right? All the way from even hearing you now talk about the abandonment with your mom. I mean, my mom was around. I live with my grandparents, but there was this huge void. Even if I was living with her, she wasn't there. She was
hmm
feeding her own addiction, right? And you can't be present and feed an addiction at the same time. It consumes everything that you are. And so, same thing, man, fighting. getting kicked getting kicked out of school, you know, swinging at my principal at one point, like all these things, angry, just resentful, all of that. And the only way you can really tame that or you know, help yourself to feel a little better is to change your state. The best way to do that is through drugs,
Yeah.
right? So so
Yeah.
cool, man. So I like to get into the nitty gritty just so people see like this wasn't something you just kind of played around with. This was a deep addiction that you had to fight through. So you continue on that journey. You start shooting up. Um, Shortly after that, I'm assuming you catch some charges. Were they drug? Did you get in trouble for drugs, or what was the prison?
So I had theft charges. That was
Okay.
mainly, it was, the bottom line was drugs. You
Yeah.
know, it was, there was theft charges. There was, I had gotten involved with people that were, in the theft ring,
Yep.
bought and sold stolen stuff, traded drugs, whatever. It didn't
Yep.
it didn't matter. I had to feed an addiction.
Yep.
So when I got caught, I had all this stolen stuff, drugs. I had, so I ended up, and that wasn't, so I had, backing up, I did this probation when I came back from Oregon. I did this probation. I got off, I made through, I got off my probation, but then I ended up catching another stupid charge and had to do 60 days in jail. And I did work release in jail. And I was taking weed into the jail, and I got
Mm,
away with it for a long time until like a few days before I got out, and I got busted. And so I got put
mm.
back on probation and had a 2 year suspended sentence, a 2 year suspended prison sentence for possession and introduction of contraband into a facility.
Ah,
And so I was on probation for that when I caught all these other charges for theft and possession, and they racked me up with a whole bunch of felonies, because
oh
everything
yeah.
that they found, it was like, okay, we're getting you first degree criminal trespass, uh, um, burglary, theft, like they just racked up these charges. So I ended
Yep.
up taking a plea, and it was 3 6s and then they give me the 2 year sentence for the marijuana charge. So I ended up with 4 felonies. They ran them concurrent,
Mm,
but I ended up getting a 6 year bit out of it. And uh, and I would have thought I would have learned it that. I got out, and I did well for a while. But that's the thing is, I never worked on any of the personal stuff. I never worked on what was causing me to keep going back to those things, and I didn't know how to deal with
mm.
things that came into my life, like those kind of adversities.
Yep.
I covered them up. It's like when I lost my business, and all of a sudden these guys go bankrupt and I can't pay my bills. I'm like, okay, I couldn't think of how do I get out of this in a
Right.
different way. Like, okay, I'm gonna go sell some drugs because I need money now.
Yep. That's right.
And so then it kept doing that, kept those cycles kept going. And like I said, after I got in that car accident, then I was in really bad shape after that. And they ended up giving me an 8 year community corrections sentence because
Mm,
I got pulled over in my car with meth out
mm.
after that.
Yep.
So I went and I did almost a year of that, and I couldn't stay clean. I got
Yep.
out, and people came. By then, people knew that I was a meth cook, and people kept coming around and, hey, we got all these ingredients. Can you make
Yep.
us a batch? Can you? And I didn't have enough boundaries to say no, and I did, and there I was right back into it again.
Yep.
And so then I wound up back in jail. Then I ended up going to the alternative was Stout Street. I don't know if anybody knows what that is, but
Mm-mm.
it's a 2 year in-house long-term treatment center. It's a therapeutic community.
Got it. Yep.
And so I got sentenced. I got to go there. And in that time, you're there 24 hours a day with addicts, and you it's 2 years of total immersion
Yeah.
on working on yourself. So I did that, but I had this massive thing that had happened to me, which was a car accident and the loss of my fiance. Dealing with that and my kids, I had two young boys that
Right.
not only lost their mom, they lost their dad to drug addiction.
Right.
Luckily, I was only gone temporarily, but while I was there, the only thing I could really work on was getting past that.
Mm,
And I learned a lot of really powerful tools and learned so much. And it was like probably the best thing that ever happened to me. But all I did was get through it. And I
yeah.
didn't ever, I knew how to work the system and I knew how to get to the point where people wouldn't call me out on my stuff.
Right.
So I was always a hiding because
Yep.
I had a lot of painful stuff that I didn't want to work on. But then I met my wife, Celeste, who's my wife now. I met her there. We were both like deep in an addiction, trying to
Mm,
get clean. But we didn't have anything to do with each other in that program. We were friends. We knew each other, and it wasn't until like after we got out of the program that we got together. I met her at an NA meeting like 6 months after I'd been out.
awesome. Cool.
So anyway, that I thought I had control. I'm like, oh, I got a couple years clean time, and we ended up getting together and getting married. And but I never worked on that stuff. I still had that deep void that
Yep.
I never felt good enough about myself. Um, and I always knew that I had more, but I didn't know how to
Mm,
get that. So I always just felt like I was down here, and and then here it is, meth came into the picture again.
mm.
And I was working in a meat plant and factory where, there's a lot of that there.
Oh
People,
yeah.
they work night shifts, they work like
That's right.
24 hours, and these people are always, the truck drivers are high,
Yep.
the workers are high, and so being around that was, it was super hard. And I could only fight it off for so long. A year went by and a couple of years went by, and, I did all right. But then there's that time where, I'm working a late night, all night, and somebody's got some stuff and like, hey man,
Yep.
I know you pulled a double, here you go. And so,
Off to the races again, man.
yeah. So
Yep.
then that started me, back in that same cycle. And, you
How old were
know,
you then, Damon?
I would have probably been maybe 40.
Okay, so this is a constant struggle. We get clean, we do a little better, we fall back off. We get clean, we do a little better. Now, knowing what I know, I could tell you exactly why, and knowing what you know now,
Yeah,
you could explain exactly why that happens. There's environmental factors, there's not working on the internal stuff. There's a lot of things there that now, if you've been clean for a little while, you know how to navigate through those things. But without those skills, you do what you've always done. You hang around the
yeah,
same types of crowds with the same types of mindsets. You continue to speak to yourself the same way that you always have by saying you're not good enough, you're just a drug, whether it be conscious or subconscious. You don't understand the power of the subconscious mind and how to kind of work with language to put yourself in a different position. I mean, these are all things that come later once you have a different level of
hmm,
awareness that's outside of addiction. But I want people to understand, like, this is because I'm telling you, man, there's people listening to this that they may have addictions that people know about or they don't know about. There's so
yeah,
many people that reach out to me and go, "Hey Jay, I just want to let you know, like, I've been struggling with, Adderall or doing cocaine or doing," and you would never imagine, but because I'm so open with my past and my story, I guess people feel compelled to reach out and you would never guess. And so my hope is that people listening to this can see that even someone like you who started young, got your ass kicked, did some prison time, lost your fiance, like you've been through some major things and it's been a recurring theme. Eventually, at least until now, you've figured out how to overcome that. And now you've got how long clean?
9 years. Just
9 years.
celebrated 9 years a couple weeks ago. So
That's awesome, man. So nearly a
pretty,
decade of an
yeah,
entirely different life. And this is the part that fires me up, dude, because you talked about that feeling inside that, man, I knew I could do more. I knew I was called for something different. I just didn't know how to do that. I still had this pit. I still felt like I was less than. I just didn't know how to activate that inside of me. And then you get clean and you kind of pop your head up above the clouds and you're like, hold on, like there's a whole nother realm of possibilities here. And then for people like us, we start to crush it, right? Like that potential inside, as long as we stay clean and we stay focused and we do the inner work, we start to thrive because we've got a hunger and a desire to
Hmm.
succeed and
Yeah.
make up lost time like the average person just will never experience.
Right.
Right. And
Yeah.
that's such a competitive advantage. So talk to me now about you get clean, you've got some time under your belt. What happens then?
So you said something about mindset that I want to talk about, but there's
Yeah.
one thing that really I think was a big thing that was for me is like I spent so much of my life hanging around with like those people that all they want to do is bring you down, and everybody has a motive. Like all of the people in my life, they all had a motive. They wanted to get high. They didn't want me for me. They didn't care about me for me. They didn't want to know what was going on in my life. They didn't
No,
really care.
you have
But
nothing in
what
common with them
Yeah,
other than drugs. That's it.
but one person came into my life, and it was the last person that I thought. And he was a pastor at the Red Rocks Church.
Mm,
He wasn't an active pastor. He was just, and I had no idea. It was just for me, he was just a guy that genuinely took interest in me and wanted to help. And I was like, wow, nobody has ever really taken interest in me in my life, a stranger that wants to help. And he was like, keep coming back, come back. I want to meet
mm,
with you regularly. And I had no idea really the depth of what was going to come of that. But the fact that this guy really wanted to genuinely help me, and I felt something different in him that I had never felt with anybody else. Like,
mm.
because I had gone to counseling, I had gone to therapy, I'd gone to every addiction, relapse, whatever,
Yep.
cognitive skills, all of the stuff that you could imagine that you have to do, and it didn't work. But
Yep.
it was when somebody took the time to really find out what was going on with me, and I felt that. I'm like, this guy genuinely cares about
Mm.
people, and he cares about me. So that was right there was a big change, and so I hope that I can do that for somebody, be that person that like really wants to help, that has no motive other than I want to see you succeed, because
Yep.
that's what this guy had. And that was a big change for me. So with that kind of got me started on this, and it made me feel like I had some kind of a purpose. So then I went back and I started realizing that like all of the stuff that I learned that I'd been avoiding, like I need to work on the stuff that happened to me when I was a child.
Yep.
The things that my mom did, the things that my dad did, the abandonment that I had, and why did I feel this, less than, or where was my self-worth? Why did I have to go out and be this badass? Why did I have to go do all this stuff
Yep.
for people to look at me? Because I was just crying for attention.
100%. Yep.
And I didn't get the attention from the person that I wanted. But once I realized that and I went back and I did that work, that's when it all started changing.
Mm.
So I think that's what you have to do is you have to go back and you have to find at that point in your life where those things happened. Where did you lose your identity? Where did you feel like your self-worth was gone? Or where did
Yep.
you feel like you had to cry out for attention because you weren't getting the attention that you needed as a child?
Yep.
So when I went back and I addressed those issues, then life started changing for me. Then I got
Mm.
started getting introduced into these masterminds. I started going to these meetup, these groups, these real estate conventions, and I got opened doors into worlds that I never knew
Mm.
existed. And
Yeah.
it changed everything. Now I'm like, I don't want to live in the clouds. Man, there's
Right.
a world out there that like I want to show people like you can't, because I think that so many people, if you could get a taste of that and start developing that self-worth
That's right.
that you don't have to find from external sources, you don't have to bury. When you like the way you feel, that's when it changes in your life.
Mm.
When you're like, man, I love the way I feel when I get up in the morning. I'm excited about the day. I'm excited about who do I get to meet, who do I get to talk to, what do I get to do today. Then you don't you don't have that need to go fill a void.
Mm.
So making that shift, and so I think those are like the little key things that little tricks that I've learned along the way, and certain things that hopefully I can show people or help people like see that you do this, you don't have to live like this anymore,
Right.
you know?
So
And so,
good, man. So good. And I think you hit on a couple really key pieces. And one is identity, right? That's what causes us to show up how we show up. It's who we believe we are, and we're going to respond that way. And if you come from a background of trauma and these types of things, you lose that. You become, an inconvenience and not good enough and all these things, and you start building these stories, right? So when you go back and you reframe those things, which is basically what we're doing, is when I look at my past, I say, hey, now today, I used to say I'm a victim. This wasn't fair. I didn't have the advantages that other people had, all these types of things. Now I go, hey, you know what? That happened for me, not to me. It allowed me to get different perspectives than other people so that I can now turn around and help someone who might be in the same. So it's all just reframing. But until you
mhm,
go back and you deal with that, your identity is still rooted in that. And
yeah,
so now today you start building evidence of, hey, that's not the person I am. I'm a person that's fit. I'm a person that's inspirational. I'm a public speaker. I'm an author. I'm a person that knows how to stay clean. I'm a person who wants to help other people. Now all of a sudden, man, it's hard not to be excited about that, right? Like I'm the person that I want
yeah,
to be in turn, instead of, oh, I'm just the person that keeps making mistakes and I can't stop using drugs and I keep, whatever. So that's the biggest piece, man. Is like we got to change our identity. You're no longer a drug addict. You're a thriving, productive member of society that's contributing in a massive way to more people than you'll ever even understand. Like, man, I'm so guilty of underplaying and like not really seeing the impact that maybe I'm having on people, because we just think like, again, that whole mindset of like we need to do more, we need to do more, we need to do more is dangerous. It's good because it keeps us driven and pushing forward, but conversations like this, you don't know who this is going to hit, and you don't know
yeah,
whose life it's going to change. And so it does get exciting, man, especially when you start to see that fruit. You talk to someone and you have a good conversation. They come back and they go, hey, man, I'm a year clean now. And I remember when we talked and you told me this and you believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. It's awesome. So,
yeah,
yeah, so cool. So we got the identity piece out of the way. Then we change our environment, right? Which is the
yeah,
next massive piece. We start getting around people who think differently. They're at a
mhm,
different vibration. They don't look at things the same at all, and it rocks our world. Now we're going,
mhm,
holy shit, like there's a whole nother world of possibility out here. And it's scary, but it's also like it's kind of like a new drug. It's like, well, what else is there? Like I want to learn more. You
yeah,
start reading books, you start, all those types of things. So
yeah.
obviously I know that you wrote a book already.
Mhm.
Tell me a little bit about that book. What's it about? Awesome.
So yeah, the breakout blueprint. It's just kind of my story of how what I did. There was some steps that I took, and I kind of touch on some little things.
Love it.
Basically, the need for change is kind of the first part of it. And what is your need for change? What is it in your life now you've come to where you need to make that change? And
Mm,
I've hit that so many times, but I don't think it was to the point where like I can't live this person anymore. I don't like who I am. I don't want to be this person anymore.
mm,
So now I need to change. And then from there, like all of the steps that it takes to make that change happen, like work at the physical, the mental,
yep.
because I was 218 pounds, and I was not in very good health, because I've always been a runner, but like I took off 20 years of running to just do drugs, and
Right,
so
right.
whenever I tried to do it again, I was like, oh man, it about killed me. And so like I don't want to be like that anymore. So I kind of those steps and just the little steps that I took there, credit, I talk about, repairing your credit, showing up, just showing up for people in your life. When you say you're going to be there at a time, you be there at a time, and making commitments and sticking to them and putting yourself in a position that you have to follow through. Like my
Mm,
my first real estate deal, I met a guy. I slept in my truck to go in a winter in a snowstorm in Monument Hill so that I could be the first person at this guy's house at 6 o'clock in the morning to get the deal because there was two or
mm,
three other realtors going to be there. He's like, whoever comes with a where the contract's going to get this deal. And it was
Right.
a little duplex in Colorado Springs, but I slept in my truck, 200, 150 miles away from home so that I could be there. And I wrote this guy a check for money that I didn't have. And I
Mm.
signed a contract with him. And then I went out that day and like, holy crap, this was a Sunday. I went to my buddy and I'm like, hey, dude, I hope I didn't make a mistake, but I'm jumping. I just
No
wrote a check.
way.
I need to borrow a couple $1,000s, man. Right now, I got to have this money in the bank tomorrow, and
Get
he did
out.
it. So it's jumping, taking that, but then it puts you in a position where you have to follow through. You
Yeah.
have to make that commitment happen. So I've done that with so many things, and that was a huge learning lesson for me because once I did that, then I went to the guy and I was confident and was like, hey, I got this deal. And so now we're business partners and we've done probably 50 real estate deals. And
Oh, dude, that's so good.
so
I love it.
if I wouldn't have jumped, it wouldn't, that wouldn't have happened. But
Yep.
um so yeah, that's kind of, basically what the book's about. And then, I talk about giving back because even at a point in my life where I was living in my truck and I was homeless and I was dealing with court and dealing with all of these charges, my last go around, and I would still go to the homeless shelter a couple times a week to go there with one motive, and that was to go serve people.
Mm.
Like I went to go give my time to people and to talk to people and to try to communicate with people that nobody else would talk to.
Mm.
The bum that's on the with all his bags on the side of the street or whatever.
Yep.
So I did that even when I was homeless. I still went to try to make a difference in people's lives. And so that was
Absolutely.
huge. So if you're really think you're in a bad spot in your life, go to a homeless shelter and
Yeah.
volunteer your time. You'll see that things aren't so bad, and it puts things into
Right.
perspective. But you also get this feeling when you talk to somebody that's sitting over there, maybe mumbling to themselves because nobody's paying attention to them, and
Yep.
you go over and you give them some food and you take the time to clean up around them and say, "Hey, what can I get you? Here, let me
Right.
take this out. Let me serve you."
Yep.
And to see that their face light up and be like, "Wow, somebody's paying attention to me."
Right.
That
Not
makes a
everyone's
difference.
given up on me.
Yeah. So
It's good, man.
those are little key things that kind of help me with my life. But I think you put all of those things together, and you start building a really great life for yourself. I have probably the best type of relationship that you could have. My wife, we it was rough for us for so many years, but we've both done so much work, and
Mm.
I had to just, like, because we were always at the beginning, I didn't like the way you said this to me, so I'm going to respond this way. And it was this
Right.
cycle
Right.
of, you did this, so I did that. You didn't do this, I didn't do that. Or you're not responding the way I feel, or
Yep.
I'm doing this for you. Or well, I had to change all of that and be
Yeah.
like, okay, what can I do different? And then what part did I play in it? Because
Mm.
no matter how she responds to me, there's something that I did that caused that. So,
Yep.
I want her to respond to me different. So I got to be.
That's it,
So
man.
that's intentionality, and that's what you start becoming intentional with how you treat people, how you live your life, and everything in your daily life, and your life will start coming.
Mm. So good, man. Well, you don't develop those skills when you're in active addiction, right? They say you stop growing
Yeah.
emotionally when you start using. And so once you kind of clear your head and get some clean time and start trying to develop relationships, oftentimes we struggle because we're still mentally and emotionally back there when we're, 15 or 16 years old. So yeah, man, it really takes a shift in all areas, and I'm excited to see what you do next. I mean, obviously, this last decade has been amazing for you. You've made some huge strides and awesome accomplishments. I know I'm inspired big time by your story. What's next?
So I think uh, I'm hoping to phase out the storage shed business, even
Okay.
though it's been really good for me. But I think my bigger purpose is to go serve people,
Mm.
and I think my calling by God is to go out and share my experiences to try to help other people. I've been going into one of the prisons here. I've been working with a lot of speaking to the guys that are getting ready to get out. They're in an HBI, which is they build skills home building
Oh,
course.
cool. Okay.
So that's a 12-week course that they have when they're within, I think, 6 months of their release date. So trying to show these guys that, when you get out, the minute you walk out that door, your debt to society is paid, and just know that you
Yep.
don't have to carry that. And if you do the right thing, like I can show you how to start a business, I can show you how to go get some business funding, and I can show you the little things that I learned, so that you don't have to go out and try to find work. Like
Mm,
I can show you how to do all this and become successful. And it's not that hard. And once you start becoming successful, then you can follow down that road and not
mm,
have to go back to that old
right.
lifestyle. So that is kind of in my future. And I've been working with Nick Santanastaso. He's my coach and
Okay.
mentor. And so I'm just trying to get out and share my message and try to help people wherever I can. And I think that's my bigger calling.
Now
I'm
is
getting
is
ready.
is
Go
Nick the
ahead.
speaking coach?
Yes, he is my speaking coach.
Okay. Got it.
He has the stage masters.
Yeah.
You know Nick.
I know of him. In fact,
Oh
Mike
yeah,
Mike referred me to him because I'm wanting to get into some speaking too. I mean, that's my
yeah,
ultimate goal as well. And he's like, "Oh man, you gotta talk to
yep,
Nick."
yeah. He's been such a force in my life. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. He's got it. If you want the goods, man, that guy's
Okay.
he
Good.
knows all the tricks of the trade, man, and
Good.
he knows how to take what you got, because you have a story too,
Yeah.
to be able to articulate that and to put that
Mm,
into a format that really resonates with people. So that's
yeah. I'll
if you,
definitely
if
be
you
reaching out to him.
yeah, Nick is great. Mike Fallott's another one. But there's people that come into your life that they have such a profound impact, and Mike is
Yep.
one of those people. Mike is, I'm getting ready to go to an event with him next week in Utah for Red Suit Realtor event.
I love it.
So yeah, so I go to a lot of events that Mike goes to, because he's introduced me to a lot of people. And that's the thing, is somebody will come along in your life that will open doors for you that you never even knew.
Yep.
And that's kind of what I want to do, is try to open those doors for people, remove gatekeepers, because we all have gatekeepers that are put on us and we don't even know they're there.
Yep.
We'd be walking by, we don't even know there's a door there, but
That's
there's
right.
somebody, keeping that hidden. Once you see that and you recognize that and can get past that, you're like, wow, there's a whole world out here that I never
Mm.
even existed.
So good,
So,
man. Well, you mentioned credit repair. I think that's interesting. So I'm in that world too, with my own story behind that, which was went bankrupt and was in the middle of an Adderall addiction and ruined my credit and had to figure out how to overcome that. Eventually started a business and figured out that I couldn't get funding, so I had to get all this higher interest funding and like this whole thing. And so I got really interested in credit repair and started going down that road. And then also I do some lending brokerage work as well, but I mean, even that for these guys coming out, like you got to get your credit right.
mhm.
I
And
mean,
it's
if
not
if you,
hard.
it's
It's
not
not
super,
hard.
no, like you got to do that because that's the world that we live in today. Most of
Yeah.
these guys are not going to have cash, and even if you do, it doesn't matter. You got to have decent credit, right? And it's
Right.
just,
Well, and so with business credit, if you start a business and you open up a bank account with that business name, usually you can get some kind of a
yep,
business line of credit or a credit card, even if it's only, $3, 4, $5,000 credit card.
that's
But
right.
for somebody coming out of prison, that's huge, because now you
Yeah,
can take that money and you can become a member of this lead company that you pay $200 a year, and then you get on their email list, and they email you leads. You just tell them what you specialize in,
yep,
and then all of this work comes to you. You don't have to go look for it, and
that's
you just
right.
pick and choose what you want to do. So business funding is a real good thing, but it's not hard, especially if you've been in prison for 3 or 4 years or 5 years or whatever. You come out, it's so much easier than you think, because it's not
Yep,
like you got to go out and pay all this stuff off. just a
No.
matter of, you make these disputes, you can settle out, but after about 3 years, that stuff doesn't really have that big of an effect on you.
Right.
But it's intentionally moving forward and getting that small credit card and using it
And
and
rebuilding. Yep.
rebuilding. And so about 6 months is really all that you can, I mean, 6 months you can go from a 500 to a 700 credit
Yep.
score if you do it right. But there's
You
a
do it right.
there's a process that you have to follow, and there's some hacks along the way too that
Oh yeah.
you can do. That I kind of, I tell people, if this is a hack you can use that'll jump your credit score up a lot.
Yep.
So it's kind of a blueprint to that too. So
Yep. Absolutely, man. Well,
um,
that's great, dude. Well, I've really thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. Where can people find you?
So I have a website. It's called DamonNichols.com. That's probably the best place to find me. I have
Awesome.
all of my coaching stuff on there, speaking. I have a course. I have some inner circle stuff, and then
Okay.
there's some stuff coming with my wife where we do some stuff with couples.
Oh, I
Uh,
love it.
Damon Nichols. Uh, I'm on Facebook. Damon R Nichols on Instagram. The Breakout Blueprint. I have a
Awesome.
YouTube channel that is Damon Nichols Breakout Blueprint, and then
Perfect.
also Damon Nichols on LinkedIn.
Okay. Sweet. So what kind of coaching do you do?
Basically, like kind of what we talked about. I help people that are struggling, that are trying to maybe get out of the 9 to 5,
Okay.
dealing with an addiction. Help them start and build businesses,
Love it.
and maybe take some of those gatekeepers out of the way.
Yep.
Like, if you do this, you don't have to deal with, especially if you've got felonies. Because I really want to work with people that have tarnished records or felonies.
Yeah.
And a lot of people that have, drug abuse, that they have a felony or something, and it's hard. They're like, I can't get a job because I got a background check. Well, what if I could wipe all of that out and you don't have to deal with me then?
Mm.
So that's kind of the people that I want to help there. But also, I do some relationship stuff with my wife, because we've been through so much, and healing inner trauma,
Yep.
inner child trauma work, stuff like that. So I'm
Great,
building a
man.
couple different courses that kind of go deeper. One thing that I've done a lot of is tax liens too. So I really want to help people with tax liens, and I can show them. I have all the information on how to buy and sell tax liens. So it's a
Awesome.
good investment. You can do for like hundreds of dollars. If you
Yeah.
you have a few $100, you can start investing in tax liens and put that money back, and 3 or 4 years down the road, you start owning properties. And
Right.
so it's a great investment.
Yeah, it's good, man. Especially for these guys coming out, maybe or not. They don't have a lot of cash and they can't go and do a big brick and mortar thing or whatever. I could see that being a great option. So
Yeah.
awesome, brother. Well, hey, listen, I'm excited to continue our, building our friendship and getting to know you better and hopefully meeting you at some events. Maybe doing another podcast down the road.
Yeah.
This has been thoroughly
Yeah,
enjoyable
for
for
sure.
me. And yeah, I
Well,
just want to,
we have quite a few events coming up this summer.
cool.
Um, I'm working with a guy, Legacy Mike Wingard. He
Okay.
does a lot of events, and they are out of this world. Like,
Awesome.
we go riding side by sides. We're getting ready. Well, we're going on a cruise.
Okay.
We'll be doing stuff probably at Hilton Head. We're looking at possibly, some out of some beachside stuff in other countries. So I don't know if he even
Sweet.
wants to do that. So yeah, we have a lot of stuff coming up, and you start going to these events, and it's like, man, they're game changers, because the
Absolutely,
people that
man.
you network with there they're on a whole other level. You start running with the
That's what I'm
big
talking
dogs.
about.
It's
Oh
it's
yeah,
yeah, it's a different life, man.
no doubt.
So
Well, I'm excited, man. Keep me
all
posted.
right,
We'll again, we'll stay connected. And yeah, I'm right here in South Carolina, so Hilton Head's right up the road. So
yeah,
I'd
okay,
love to hang out. So cool, brother. Appreciate
all right,
everything, and look forward to catching up with you again soon.
all right. I'll talk to you again.
See ya.
Thanks.